are just a few weeks out. How are you feeling?
You know, feeling very, very good. And part of the reason is that as we travel up and down the state, as part of this bus tour, which is the Experience Matters, Stop the Spiral of Lawlessness in this state, I'm meeting Californians of all political stripes, Democrats, Republicans, independents, and they're saying the same thing to me. They are frustrated, they are fed up, they're just afraid of what's going on in their communities. And they want someone who's going to bring back safety and security for their communities. They want someone who's actually experienced in having done so. I have 30 years of experience in criminal justice issues from being a federal prosecutor, a U.S. Assistant Attorney General, and a defense attorney, versus my opponent, the appointed California Attorney General Rob Bonta, who literally had 0 years of law enforcement experience before he took the job. So they want someone experienced, and then they want some policies that make sense. I tell people that, look, I want to partner with the police rather than just treat them as our enemy. I want to fund police departments if we want a better hired, trained, and supervised police force rather than defund or cut their budgets. And I want to make sure that all crimes have proportionate consequences, as opposed to turning our backs on certain criminals or criminal activities that we just, for political reasons, don't want to prosecute. So when I give people that agenda and I lay out Nathan Hochman versus Rob Bonta, 30 years experience versus 0, pro-victim, pro-police agenda versus pro-criminal agenda, not just the polling, but the people I meet with say, you know what, we want you as our Attorney General.
I was reading the San Diego Tribune in which they endorsed you, and they said that although they endorsed you, there are several things that Bonta does very well for the California voters, what they care about: abortion, climate change, and gun rights. So walk me through those 3 things and how you will tackle those as Attorney General.
100%. So on abortion, I have been pro-choice my whole life. And as the California Attorney General, I will enforce the laws on the books of the state of California, full stop. That's the job, by the way, of your chief law enforcement officer. It's not to make the laws. That's the assembly or the state senate or the governor. It's to enforce the laws. And if I had a problem with that, I shouldn't run for the position. So when it comes to enforcing the laws for real women's reproductive rights, I will be as much of a champion of enforcing laws as Rob Bonta, but I also have the qualifications and experience to do so, which he completely lacks. And he forgets to tell you that portion of the equation. When it comes to guns, again, Rob Bonta claims that he wants to take the illegal guns off the street and how important it is. But not only does he lack the experience that I have of actually taking guns from real criminals, there's a list that exists in California of over 26,000 people who today illegally are possessing guns. These are convicted felons, people that have court orders for domestic violence or mental health issues, and that list has only grown under Rob Bonta's 1 year in office rather than shrank. Millions of dollars have been appropriated to get those guns off the street, and Rob Bonta has completely failed in that mission. But when it comes to law-abiding citizens who actually go through the licensing requirements to get certain concealed weapon permits, Rob Bonta has gone ahead and disclosed on the internet through a breach of his California Department of Justice system hundreds of thousands of law-abiding Californians' personal and confidential information. We're talking their home addresses, their dates of birth, and his response, rather than saying, I take full responsibility and I will suffer any consequences for that huge, enormous data breach leak, he has said basically, oops, I'm sorry. I'm going to hire an independent law firm at taxpayer expense, and I will guarantee you that their investigation's results will come out on November 9th or later, so he can't be scrutinized about it. So when it comes to enforcing the laws on the books for gun, in sort of gun issues, I'll go after the illegal guns and I'll respect law-abiding gun owners' rights. The third issue of climate change.
Before you move on to climate change really fast, you have said multiple times now that your job as Attorney General is to enforce the law, but then the Attorney General Rob Bonta, he has actually played a role in trying to get bills passed. He sponsored a bill to kind of reform the concealed permit carry law, which did not pass. Yes. What are your thoughts on getting involved in passing more gun restrictions?
Well, it's funny you should bring up that law that did not pass. So there was a U.S. Supreme Court case that basically got rid of the just or good cause requirement as far as licenses go for concealed weapons permits. Rob Bonta touts his legislative experience. He's a Sacramento politician, used to represent Oakland, and supposedly he has expertise in doing this. Yet when it came time to actually get the law passed in the state assembly, he actually was down on the floor, and he failed. He failed with a Democratic supermajority of over 75% in the state legislature. He couldn't get 67% to vote for his law. What does that tell you about the one thing he says he's got an advantage over me, which is I can work with the state legislature and get laws passed that'll make us more safe and secure? He failed at that as well. So again, I believe that we should reform our laws to comply with the U.S. Supreme Court's decision, and again, engage in smart laws that help make Californians more safe and secure. Rob Bonta, again, won't get those illegal guns off the streets, and in the one thing that he could have done to make California law more safe and secure in compliance with U.S. Supreme Court law, he 100% failed.
And so you agree with the Bruins decision?
I agree. Well, again, as far as agreeing with the Bruin decision, it's one of those decisions that, like all Supreme Court decisions, I will respect. And then, in other words, I will respect and enforce under California law, because now it becomes part of California law. Once the U.S. Supreme Court effectively rules on the U.S. Constitution, California is obligated, to the extent it has to comply with the U.S. Constitution, to make that law or put that law into effect. And so that would be one of the laws, or one of the interpretations of the laws, that I would absolutely have to respect and comply with as a California Attorney General.
And as for the third tier, the climate change?
Again, climate change, I believe climate change is a real situation. I believe in the science behind climate change. To the extent that California passes laws that deal with climate change, I will 100% enforce those laws. And again, I won't bring a political agenda to it. If the laws are on the books of the state of California and the state legislature passes those laws, I will enforce them. Well, full stop. I mean, it's climate change is one of the biggest issues for our generation, for my children, and God willing, my grandchildren's generations, that has to be addressed now.
Let's do a little bit of a lightning round, because I know
Certainly.
I've asked these questions in the past, but I keep seeing them come up in articles, people question on social media. So just kind of yes or no. You can expand if you want to.
Or yes with an explanation, or no with an explanation. Okay.
All right, let's talk about election security. Do you believe that the 2020 election was secure and fair?
I believe the 2020 election the results of that election have to be respected. I believe that it was I believe what the U.S. Attorney General said at the time, who had access to more information than I or you or anyone will have, and he looked at the allegations of election integrity fraud, and he said there was not a systemic effort that challenges the result of that election. Joe Biden is our president. I believe that the election that elected him is one that has to be respected. I believe that January 6th was a political insurrection, and anybody who actually wants to invade our U.S. Capitol and harm or kill Capitol Police need to go to jail for as long as possible. It was not legitimate political discourse. I don't believe, as the follow-on, that Donald Trump won that election. These are, again, some basic common sense propositions that someone like myself, who is trained to follow the evidence and apply the law, should have no problem with.
Taking my questions right from me.
There you go.
All right, who did you vote for 2016 and 2020?
Well, I assume you're referring to president. I didn't vote for anyone for president. I didn't vote for Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton in 2016, Joe Biden in 2020.
Okay. It seems like on a national level, when you look at the national media discourse publicly online, it's very divided. And here you are campaigning as a Republican, but saying you're pro-choice. You believe in the gun laws that California passes. You believe in this and that, things that are typically climate change more on the Democratic side. So how do you make that message get to the voters who are not happy in California right now with what they're seeing?
So we have raised an unprecedented amount of money, over $3.5 million so far, to get our message to voters, TV, radio, social media. Interesting about that money, 40% of that money comes from Democrats and independents. Because when I give the same speech to Republican, Democrat, and independent audiences, it resonates with them. Because they're parents, they're grandparents, they're kids who are concerned about their parents or their neighbors. And they look at their communities, they see them unsafe, insecure. They see violent and street crime exploding, homelessness at an all-time high, and even fentanyl poisonings that are going to kill more people in their community than possibly COVID. And they say, look, this is not the California I like. It's not the California I grew up with. It's not the one that's been promised to me as the Golden State. And I want to find someone who can actually make a difference. And the two things that they resonate with what I'm saying is that, look, I want someone experienced. I'm tired of people being sold to me who don't have any experience in the job. So again, I bring 30 years versus 0 years of experience from my opponent on criminal justice issues. And then they want an agenda that makes sense. They're tired of people getting arrested in the morning and released by the afternoon. They're tired of people walking out of stores with just under $950 and not being prosecuted. They're tired of these smash and grab robberies where, again, even if they're caught, these people go to jail for a minimum amount of time, and generally they're not caught because we have this spiral of lawlessness that is going on in our society, that people like Rob Bonta, who organize task forces that actually touch a fraction of the problem. And he's never personally led a task force himself, so he wouldn't know how to do it. You know, they look at that situation going on right now and they say, we need a change. And my pitch to them is I say, look, vote for the person over the party when it comes to your safety and security. Ask yourself one simple question. Who do you think will keep you and your family more safe and secure for the next 4 years? If you like the way things are going right now, vote for Rob Bonta. If you think that we actually need someone with experience who has much more of a pro-victim, pro-law enforcement agenda, vote for Nathan Hochman. But either way, make sure you vote.
I promise I won't take up too much more of your time, but to what degree do you believe that homelessness and crime are interconnected, and how would you deal with that?
They're absolutely. Homelessness and crime are absolutely interconnected. And let me give you the best way of understanding that is that over 70% of the chronic homeless population suffers from severe mental illness or a drug addiction or both. Now, Gavin Newsom, for instance, was tackling half that problem. He set up these things called care courts, and when Gavin Newsom gets it right, either intentionally or because he stumbles on the answer, I will support that. I will support anyone, governor, state legislator, who wants to make safety and security their primary focus. In fact, I very much believe in Ronald Reagan's old line that says, there's no limit to the good you can achieve if you don't care who gets the credit. I don't care who gets the credit. Make our state more safe and secure. You can have all the credit. I will be your partner in that, or you can be my partner in that. But when Gavin Newsom, for instance, does not do the same thing for drug addiction, he had a bill in front of his desk about 1.5 years ago that was going to do for substance abuse what he did for mental health, which is basically have judges be able to order mandatory treatment for a drug addiction. 65-1, it passed the state assembly and he vetoed it. I couldn't be more, this is AB 1542. I couldn't have been more upset. If I was the California Attorney General, I would have been lobbying for it publicly. I would have been lobbying against Gavin Newsom, but that's not something Rob Bonta could do. Rob Bonta doesn't show up. Anytime Gavin Newsom takes a position he might disagree with, because he's not going to contradict his boss. I will bring an independent voice to Sacramento, and working with Gavin Newsom and the state legislature when they get it right on safety and security, and screaming very loudly when they get it wrong.
I know you said it's your job to enforce the law, but if you are elected, what is the first law that you are going to weigh in on, or bill you're going to weigh in on that you would like to see passed?
Well, I think we need to reform Proposition 47. There's many ways, in fact, Democrats have even come up with ways to do it, and one of the interesting ways is to create a serial property theft law that works on the back of 47. It says that if you commit a series of these property thefts under $950, either the second or the third one within a certain time frame, let's say somewhere between 90 and 180 days, the second or third one becomes a felony and then can result in state prison. And if you have a situation, again, that deals with the building blocks of the spiral of lawlessness, because it always starts small. It starts with one person in your society committing a small crime, and people see, well, it's okay, he's getting away with it. So the crimes gets progressively larger. You know, one person in a small business stealing becomes 3 people in a CVS, 10 people in a Walgreens, 80 people in a Nordstrom's, 100 people in a 7-Eleven, and then you got killing, smash and grab robberies and follow home robberies following after that. So if we can tackle the smallest unit of that, dealing with property crimes first, then we can start expanding out to all the other different types of crimes, you know, and making sure we absolutely focus on fentanyl poisonings and treating those dealers as murderers.
Anything else I should have asked you?
You know, the other issue that you know is very frustrating is that Rob Bonta refuses to debate me. I've asked for him to have live, in-person debates. And quite candidly, if I was proud of my experience and I was proud of my record, I would want to debate my opponent in every of the 58 counties. Every one. I'd want to be in the social media, I'd want to be on TV or radio every week for the entire election. Rob Bonta refuses to have these live in-person debates, and I would say because he's either shamed or scared. He's shamed that he has 0 years of law enforcement experience against my 30. He doesn't want the voters to know that. Why would you if you're Rob Bonta? Because then people might think you're completely unqualified for the job of being chief law enforcement officer. And when I could actually challenge his pro-criminal agenda publicly, or the public could challenge it and say, Rob Bonta, why didn't you show up for human trafficking victims? Rob Bonta, why didn't you show up for fentanyl victims and their families to get much more tough laws passed? Rob Bonta, why do you back George Gascon, the LA DA, who's enacted the most pro-criminal agenda in LA history? Why don't you come in and replace him and actually bring safety and security back to the Los Angelinos? He refuses to actually allow the public to confront his experience and his policies. I'd say, I have said publicly, you're gutless, Rob Bonta. You are gutless. And if you want to have a debate in your kitchen after dinner with the Zoom camera running, I'm game. You can make any rules for the debate. You can just give me one answer for the question, and you can give 10. But let me challenge you publicly on your position. Let the public in to do a live debate, and I'm game.
I'm happy to host that one.
I would, yes.
As a new resident of the state of California, I'll be voting for the first time this November. Well, do you have a message for new residents that come in and see the state how it is? And I work for the media, so I see more than my fair share of violence and criminal activity. But for somebody that is not in my position, do you have something that you can reassure them that, look, I moved to California, this is where I'm going to spend the rest of my life. Why is it like this? Because I'm on the East Coast. I'm from the East Coast. They make California look like paradise. They don't show everything. All they show is palm trees. So, what's the message you would give for new residents from the state of California?
So, for new residents, I would thank you for coming to California. You've selected probably the best state of all the states in the United States. It has the greatest economic promise for you and your family. It used to have fantastic schools. The streets used to be safe and secure. 8 years ago, 2014, I would tell you, we had one of the safest years in California history. So it always isn't like what you see today. I mean, sure, we have earthquakes, traffic, smog, and all the other stuff. But this is an incredible state with resources that, quite candidly, no other state can match. The question is, can we bring in leadership to get us back to where we were just 8 years ago? We've had weakened laws and weakened prosecutors, and right now one of the weakest California attorney generals in the last 50 years. What I would ask you to do is to vote. I would ask you and everybody in this state to vote. Look at the person rather than the party when you're deciding who to vote for California Attorney General. Ask yourself, Who has the experience? Who has the agenda? Ask yourself, who is going to keep you and your family safe and secure for the next 4 years? I believe if you ask all those questions, you will end up voting for myself, Nathan Hochman, for California Attorney General, and then giving me the opportunity to create a safe and secure environment like you read in the brochures or saw on TV, so that you and your family, hopefully 4 years from now, when I've been the Attorney General, can say, oh, well, 2026 was now our safest year in the last 50 because Nathan Hochman has worked 4 years to make it so. That would be my message to you and, well, everyone else that hopefully will be voting in this election.
All right, here's a hypothetical question. You said that you didn't vote for president in 2016 or in 2020. If you had to vote again, which you will in 2024, who would you vote for if it were between DeSantis or Biden, DeSantis or Newsom?
Again, what I would be voting for, I would take a very hard look at all the positions at that time and where these candidates ended up. Not necessarily where they start today. So your hypothetical is in some ways almost impossible to answer because I don't know where any of these candidates will be in 2024 as far as their positions go. The one thing I can absolutely assure you is that they're not on the ballot for California Attorney General right now in 2022. And my 100% focus is to get Californians to vote for the person in this election for California Attorney General that's both experienced and will make their lives more safe and secure for the next 4 years. And that person's Nathan Hochman.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right. Have a wonderful day.